first of all, the bottom line. This was not a surprise attack. Oh, yeah, well, he surprised us. Oh, really? Who do you think you're talking to? Bloody idiots. We have the Israeli Defense Forces as one of the most trained and best equipped armies in the world. And we're talking about a very small area in terms of Israel, Gaza. We have Mossad, one of the most sophisticated and widespread intelligence agencies in the world that make surveillance an art form. It's on the cutting edge. It knows everything that's going on in that area. But somehow, hundreds of Hamas, quote, militants laid siege to Israel, put thousands of rockets into Israel, which they somehow gathered or built or whatever, without Mossad and the IDF having any idea. Oh no, we didn't know about that. We had Hamas operatives coming into Israel on frickin' hang gliders. But they never knew it was coming. We had fighting in all these different areas of Israel, these different locations. But the IDF and Mossad and all the rest of that vast Israeli security network had no idea. To say they are lying to you is to state the bloody obvious. And we'll get into why. This is a quote from a former IDF soldier who was a border observer. And she worked with the highest level technology available. That's what Israel does. And this is what she said. If a bird came close, we knew. Even a cockroach came to our fence border, we knew. How did 400 Hamas pass through today? The answer is they were allowed to. Was this a surprise attack for the civilian population of Israel? Oh, yes, of course. Was it even a surprise attack for many in the rank and file of the military? But the inner core that's running the show, surprise to them? You must be bloody joking. And this situation reminded me of someone I've quoted over the years in the books, over the decades. It's a man called Leroy Fletcher Prouty. He served as Chief of Special Operations for the Joint Chiefs of Staff under President Kennedy, JFK. Fletcher Prouty said, "No one has to direct an assassination. It happens. And for assassination, that means an attack like the one in Israel now as well. No one has to direct an assassination. It happens. The active role is played secretly by permitting it to happen. This is the greatest single clue," he said, "who has the power to call off or reduce the usual security precautions." Who has that power in Israel must now come under the spotlight and be questioned why they did so. Because they obviously did. Now, what they want you to do in any situation like this is to take sides. And if I'm going to take the side of anyone, I take the side of the civilians in Israel who have been subject to these horrors that continue, and the civilians in Gaza who are now suffering the horrors of the Israeli response. But in terms of sides, one fighting the other, to take either is to lose the plot. There's a global cult, and there is a major aspect of it, which is called the Sabbatean cult. The Sabbatean cult goes back to the 1600s. I've detailed it all in the books, but basically it is a grouping, a satanic grouping that is expert in posing as what it's not. So they might pose as Islamic leaders. They might pose as Vatican leaders. Or they might, and have, mercilessly for the Jewish people in general, they might and have posed as Jewish leaders. So when you look at what's happening now and the horrors of what has been imposed upon Jewish civilians, we should not take sides, because when you get to the core of what's controlling this side and what's controlling that side, ultimately, you're looking at the same people. And Sabbateans, who have been the controllers of Israel from the start and then moved in on places like America, they, irony of ironies, hate Jewish people. They have contempt for them. And I've been saying all these years that in the end, this Sabbatean cult is gonna throw the Jewish people in general under a colossal bus. And we are now, as I speak, seeing that happen. They don't care about you, Jewish people of Israel and the wider world. The Sabbatean cult has infiltrated you. It does not care about you. And that's why it's allowed this to happen, for ulterior motives we will get into. And at the same time, this global cult, as I call it, is behind Hamas. If you want to bring two groups of people into conflict with each other, then control both sides, and it's a doddle. This is how the world works, and we're seeing a blatant example of it now. Just look at the history of Hamas, and you will see how much influence, fundamental influence in its creation, came from the Israeli government. So Hamas is hanging the Palestinian civilians out to dry, and the same is happening with the government of Israel and Israeli civilians. And here's another quote from Fletcher Prouty. Remember, he was an insider. The Kennedy assassination has demonstrated that most of the major events of world significance are masterfully planned and orchestrated by an elite coterie of enormously powerful people. Wait for this, this is crucial, who are not of one nation, one ethnic grouping, or one overridingly important business group. They are a power unto themselves for whom others work. Neither is this power elite of recent origin. Its roots go deep into the past, which is what I've been uncovering all these decades. This is what I call the global cult, and this is seeking to lead the world ever more obviously to a global dystopia. And to do that, you have to destroy the current status quo, whatever it is. You could call it creative destruction. You have a status quo, a way that society works, the way that society is. And as long as that status quo stays there, you can't move the world on to your dystopia. So you destroy that status quo, and wars are bloody perfect. Economic crashes too. And then you move to another status quo. And then eventually you destroy that status quo and move on to another. And with each new status quo, they are getting closer and closer to the global dystopia they've been working towards for a long time. And Fletcher Prouty was right. This is not a recent thing. This goes way back into what we call history. So already Netanyahu is saying that once we've overcome Hamas, we're going to go for Iran, which we say is behind Hamas. Iran, another cult-controlled regime. So that is one of the reasons for what is happening, to turn the fire towards Iran. And that has big implications, as I'll come to. So Netanyahu is already talking about targeting Iran, which he says is behind all this. Well, I've been saying for so many years that the plan is to create a conflict between the West and the East. The East involving China, the dominant party, Russia, and other countries, and I've said this many times over the years, including Iran. And Iran has just been invited to join this BRICS economic trading group, which is dominated by China and Russia. But what else is happening with Ukraine? It has brought Russia and China closer in an economic and other aspects alliance together, which is the pieces on the chessboard being moved around. So Ukraine is a proxy war. Who between? The West and Russia, supported by China. It's already begun, and this is just another aspect of it that we're seeing here. And I had an email today. I wrote to a friend of mine in Israel, a Jewish lady in Israel, and asked her if she was okay. And this is part of what she replied. People are bewildered, she said. How on earth the great and powerful army of Israel couldn't even protect these settlements? The militants took over and literally conquered 2 settlements entirely, shooting in the streets. I feel this is just the beginning of something even major about to happen. And just like with 9/11 in the US, it smells like classic problem reaction solution. I immediately understood what goes on here. It was given the green light for their desire to invade Iran and ultimately create their World War III. The people of Israel are nothing but patsies, as well as the people of Gaza. Obviously, an illusion of a country, an illusion of safety. Absolutely spot on. We have 2 sides, apparently, but one side in reality. Fighting each other, getting other people to fight for them, allowing the slaughter of Jewish civilians, and Hamas knowing that that slaughter will lead to the slaughter of Palestinian civilians. They are the same side, ladies and gentlemen. And it happens all over the world all the time. You see different sides, you see different groups. But it's the same agenda, the same psychopathy, the same evil on public display. And we, please, we as a human race have got to start seeing that our so-called bloody leaders are not there to serve us. They're there to serve an agenda, to enslave us on a level never seen in known human history. There's a global cult, and it's running the world through what appear to be different governments and World Health Organizations and Silicon Valley and banking systems, all of it corporations. And we need to grasp that. The Palestinians and the Jewish people are both pawns in that game, and they need to come together to see who the real enemy is and has always been.